Okay, all set. Thank you.
Okay. So, I mean, I think in some of the more practical, like physical stuff, right,
Mhm.
is all the preparation thing. So make sure you've got pads
Mhm.
at home, right? It's just a good idea to buy like a brand that you are comfortable with. And pads are better than tampons. They recommend you don't use tampons often.
Okay.
And so that's an important thing to have ready. I always recommend that people have some comforting food and snacks at home.
Mhm.
So that way they don't even have to think about it. You can just go home and watch Netflix and eat those yogurt-covered pretzels by the plateful, right? Making sure that you know what your transportation system is going to be, whether it's or not you've got somebody coming to pick you up, right? But just having all of that like logistical like stuff planned beforehand is important. If you've got kids already, making sure that you've got somebody to watch them.
Mhm.
Um,
So just stuff
yeah.
that basically stress you out on the day of, essentially.
Yeah, stuff so that
Got it.
you don't have to worry about it. Like make a heat pack. If you don't have a heat pack already, there are easy ways to make like a rice sock, which is something I recommend to everybody.
Okay.
And a rice sock is literally just a sock full of dried rice that you can heat up in the microwave for like a minute or two.
And that'll help with the cramping.
Exactly.
How long do most women experience cramping after? And is it like right after or?
Yeah. So most people will have you have pretty severe cramps during the procedure, right? Because the
Uh-huh.
point of what they're trying to do is to get your uterus to contract, and that's what gives you cramps. And they're akin to like if you have period cramps, they're akin to like the worst period cramps that
Ooh.
you'll have. Yeah, it's pretty shitty. And
Oh,
usually that goes away pretty quickly. Within 15 minutes, they kind of
okay.
subside, right?
Okay.
But you might have some sort of general ickiness or cramps that come up during the time, right? It's not uncommon for your body to pass, to bleed or have blood clots, right?
Uh-huh.
Basically anything that, they say more than 2 pads in an hour is too much. If you're bleeding through those, right, you need to call. Or if you're passing a blood clot that's like, the size of what you'd make like an OK sign, right?
Okay.
OK circle. I'm like trying to figure out a good way to show you that. Like that's too big of a blood clot, but anything smaller than that's usually normal, right? So those are the things that people don't get told.
Yeah.
And that's important to know about it until the end, right?
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the sort of practical stuff is just like preparing. Have your food ready, right? Have comfy, clean clothes, right? Have coloring books or whatever things that music to listen to.
Mhm.
Um, things that will just make you like feel more comfortable and taken care of, especially if you don't have somebody to take care of you, right?
Mhm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, those are good tips. And I mean, I would hope that like most doctors would prepare women with that kind of advice, but you're saying that's not necessarily always the case.
Well, I think doctors talk about the sort of physical things, right? And by physical I mean like what your body's going to do, right?
Yeah.
The procedure will take about 5 minutes, but we're going to do, dilate your cervix, and depending on what the procedure is, proceed from there. You might experience some like bleeding afterwards, right? Here are some of the things, but they're not going to tell you, hey, you should have the pads that you like available, right?
Yeah.
You should make sure that you like have things to keep you, occupied and happy in the waiting room, right?
Mhm.
Or maybe you shouldn't talk to your evangelical parents about this, and here are some other people to talk to, right?
Yeah.
They're not going to come out with that information. If you're at a supportive clinic like a Planned Parenthood,
Mhm.
um, there's probably somebody on staff who'll be able to talk to you about some of those things if you need it. But again, they're seeing like 20 people a day sometimes, right? They might
Yeah.
not have the capacity to sit down with everybody and go, okay, so here's the pre-planning that you need to do before you come into your procedure, right?
Mhm.
Or let's talk about, why you might not want to post this on Facebook because of your, crazy aunt, like whatever, like
Yeah.
they're not necessarily going to have those people there, even at the best clinics.
Okay. Okay, that's good to keep in mind. That's where you guys come in, I guess.
Yeah, and that's where we come in. I think the other resource, because we can't be everywhere, right? We're just in New York, is to look at the Doula Project zine.
Yes, I was looking at that. Was
Yeah.
it Victoria sent it, and it's very cool.
Yeah, and
It's
it's
like a
one of
neat
those.
way of. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's a good resource for people who don't have a doula to go with them, right?
Mhm.
Or who might not get a doula when they're there. It's one of those books that can help people prepare, but then can also help them with the after effects of getting an abortion.
Yeah. If somebody did want to get an abortion doula and they don't live in New York, what do you recommend they do? Like, are those people on staff at hospitals ever, or are there local chapters? Like, what's the?
Yeah. So there are local chapters of the Doula Project. It's just they're largely in bigger cities, right?
Yeah.
And not all clinics allow doulas in the room for an abortion procedure, right? You can often take a doula with you as your support person, but maybe
Mhm.
they are not allowed in the procedure room or the recovery room.
That's
But
odd.
yeah, it's unfortunate. There's the sort of hospitals and clinics protecting themselves, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I get it, but it's also just like, wouldn't you want to allow them to have one person with them, like whether that's
yeah.
your husband, your
Yeah.
girlfriend,
I think
why does it matter?
I think the concern too is that people pass out.
Oh.
um, People pass out, or it's like a more emotionally charged for them than they think,
Mhm.
right? And so if your support person is like KO'd on the floor, sobbing hysterically, right? That's not going to be supportive, and that lends itself to more work for the clinic staff.
Oh man, that does sound
um,
terrible.
Yeah, and so I think the perk of having a doula with you, whether it be for an abortion or a birth, right, is it's a person that's been there and that's seen it, right?
Mhm.
And they're not going to be traumatized or scared shitless. They know what's coming, right?
Mhm.
A partner or a friend or a family member might be more anxious and cause you more anxiety than anything.
Mhm.
And so we really recommend that if you're bringing a support person, right, to make sure that there's somebody that's calm and centering and okay with the decision that you're making and supportive,
Mhm.
or at least able to keep their mouth shut, right?
Yeah.
Or
And not super queasy.
they're not super queasy, and they will most likely not be allowed into the clinic procedure room or the recovery room.
Mhm.
But they can be with you there beforehand, where there's often a lot of waiting, and they can be with you afterwards as well. Help
Okay.
make sure you get that egg sandwich you're dying for and watch 6 episodes of Grey's Anatomy in a row.
Do you think that's? I mean, this is probably a hard question to answer, but do you think that's something most women know or not? Like, I don't know, because you.
No, I don't think most women know that.
Yeah.
Um,
So
I
I
don't
guess
think.
that would be like an important tip is to realize that you're not going to have that person to hold your hand.
Yeah, well, and then to also really be careful with the person that you pick to hold your hand, right?
Mhm.
Because most people make things about themselves, right? That's again the perk of a doula is they're not somebody that's making it about themselves, right?
Yeah.
It's somebody who is there explicitly for you and for your support.
Mhm.
And so you have to kind of pick somebody who's got a doula soul. If you can find that person, or at least somebody, again, like I said, who can keep their mouth shut, right?
Yeah.
Because this is about you and the experience that you're having with your body, and not about them or their feelings or emotions.
Yeah.
And sometimes for some people it's really hard to find that person, and so if you can't find that person, then consider the other options that you've got. And when I say consider the other options that you've got, it means maybe going alone to the clinic if you can't find somebody, right? Some clinics require that you have an escort, so sometimes that's not always a possibility.
Mhm.
But sometimes I've seen an escort be the Uber driver who's going to pick you up, right? and making sure that you've got the sort of things in place to make sure that you're taken care of after the procedure, right? So you've got those groceries and that clean laundry and that favorite blanket and that terrible show lined up that you're going to watch, you know? Like you've got these things that you're already taking care of yourself for.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Could we talk a little about some of the like more ways to prepare kind of emotionally and psychologically for it?
Sure. So I think it really kind of depends on the individual in terms of what practices work for them. I recommend that people really, and granted, if somebody has made the decision to have an abortion, right, they know that it's the best option for them, right? There might be some feelings and emotions that come along with that, and I recommend that people kind of sit with those and examine where they're coming from. So, you know, asking yourself the sort of questions of like, why are you feeling that way? Why do you have that belief, right? Why are you anxious to talk to your family or not, and why, right? And I think the really like important reminder for people in that sort of preparation things is you can ask for help and not have to explain why you need it. And I think as women especially, right, we don't like to ask for help often. And we really don't like having to explain why we need that help, right? And so this is one of those instances where you don't need to ask for help. You just have to figure out, you got to figure out who's going to be supportive for you in that moment and whether or not you feel comfortable telling them what's going on, right?
Okay. So think about who you want to share the information with carefully beforehand.
Yeah, right. Because you kind of, also if you're anxious about how they might react because of their religious background, right, or because you've never talked about it before, you know, right, you can kind of test the waters with them and say, hey, my friend is getting an abortion and you know, needs a ride, and what do you think about that? Or there's so much talk about abortion going on in the news recently, right? So kind of if you're not sure if your support person's going to be supportive, try and ask them questions too that are not personal to see how they might react, right?
That's a good tip.
Yeah, it'll help you figure out if you're going to feel safe with somebody or not.
When it comes to kind of dealing with, I mean, I would never assume that everyone has mixed emotions about it, but for women who do have mixed emotions, how would you recommend kind of dealing with those as they come up? Is that something you would want to talk to somebody like a therapist about, or maybe just confide in a supportive friend who can listen?
Hell yeah, right? I think you definitely, if you've got that resource there, right? You've got supportive people in your life, or you've got a therapist you can talk to, definitely talk to them, right? Definitely share, if you feel comfortable, share that experience with them, and help, you know, if you're an external processor, do that processing with them. It's, you know, it's, I don't know, I'd say about half the time it's a really easy decision for people, right? You're like, oh yes, give me this abortion, you know, I can't have any more kids, or I don't want this kid right now, or, you know, I've been sick for 6 weeks straight and I can't do this, right?
Yeah.
And it's really a decision about caring for themselves. I think it's always a decision about caring for yourself and your future, and recognizing whether or not that, you know, having a baby is something that you can do, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think definitely reaching out to talk to somebody if you feel comfortable, processing that information. If you have an abortion at a Planned Parenthood, there's oftentimes somebody who will talk to you afterwards. So maybe, you know, you're like me and you don't think about the sort of emotional processing of a thing until weeks afterwards, right? And it comes up to you a few weeks later, then you can go talk to your Planned Parenthood. There's also, I think I sent you this out, your abortions. There's different organizations like that where you can go and talk to other people. It's very important to be careful in this day and age to make sure that you're going to an actually supportive group and not to a group that claims that they're supportive, to Supreme Court.
Seriously.
But yeah, it's, again, that's sort of making sure that you feel safe and secure in the space and knowing that you've made the most, caring and loving decision for yourself.
Okay. Would you recommend seeking out somebody who's had an abortion before, whether that's like somebody you know or someone you find in one of these online communities, just to kind of, I don't know, have them give their experience?
So I wouldn't.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that is because your experience is probably going to be totally different.
Yeah.
I think there are also people on those online communities who are trolling to make people feel shitty about making those decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Really, it's a pretty fucked up page we live in, right? And so you have to be really careful about who you're getting advice from. If you have a very trusted friend, right, maybe talking to them, or you have a trusted family member that you want to talk to about that, then yeah, you can ask them about their experience, but likelihood is your experience is going to be totally different.
Yeah.
And so unless it's a friend that's gone to the exact same clinic that you have, I'm not sure to be helpful. And even then, they might have had an entirely different emotional experience than you. So getting that sort of informational support of what am I going to be looking at, what is this procedure going to be like, I'd almost get that straight from the clinic themselves.
Okay. That's good advice. Yeah, I feel like the risk of, you're so vulnerable, and the risk of being hoodwinked is unfortunately high. That I guess the risk is just too great, honestly.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Can you think of any kinds of emotional exercises that you guys or that some people find helpful before, after? Or meditations or I know it depends on the individual, and I did see some of this in the zine, which was really great.
Yeah. I think, focusing on deep breathing or guided meditations or visualizations, right? Using one of those apps that you can just pop in your ears and put on, right? I think having a sort of, playlist that you want to listen to, right? If you want to stream Beyonce, you can do that before, during, and after your procedure, right? And focusing on that so you can kind of emotionally remove yourself a little bit. I think that's a good thing. I think writing for people is often a really nice emotional release, and so having that experience, being able to journal something out is good. And so, yeah, that's sort of again, self-emotional caretaking. Some people have spiritual experiences. If you feel like praying is going to be supportive, then that's something that is good to do. Some people like to, burn some herbs before they leave the house and then, burn them again when they get there, or make a special tea, or again, that sort of doing those sort of things for your emotional and spiritual well-being. Is really important.
Okay. Let's see. Would you say that maybe kind of letting go of any expectations that you should feel any certain way would be kind of a helpful exercise?
Oh, yeah, because you might really care about it. You might be really heartbroken, right? And then there's some people who just really don't care,
Yeah.
And I think people like to think that women are supposed to feel a certain way, or people getting an abortion are supposed to. We try to use people because not everybody who gets an abortion is a woman. But to make sure that you might not feel, again, that's the sort of danger of talking to a friend about this, right? Or talking to somebody else online, is they might have felt a certain way that you didn't. And so you might be totally at peace and home with this decision when you think you shouldn't feel that way, right? And that's okay. The way you feel about it is totally valid. And and again, that sort of external expectations that we get from the rest of the world is not, generally is not applicable, but specifically for this isn't, right?
Yeah.
The way that you feel after this procedure, before, during, and after the procedure is your own feeling and no one else's.
That's well said. Let's see. What advice would you give a woman who, or a person who doesn't have really anyone in their social group to go to, and they want to talk to someone, but they don't have anyone in their lives really who they want to trust with that?
Yeah. So I'd say if you're lucky enough to have a therapist, go and talk to them. I would go to the clinic and ask for sort of emotional support resources, right? See if they know of anybody that you can talk to. Often, based on where you are in the world, there will be some sort of a resource. There's several in New York City where you can just, call up an organization and they will connect you to somebody that you can talk to. And just to have that sort of safety net. But it just depends on place to place. So the place I would start is the clinic where I got my procedure, and ask them if they have any resources for processing or emotional support after the procedure.
Okay. Going back to kind of like preparing your body, are there any like day before or day of suggestions that you would have, or morning of, I guess? I don't know, certain kinds of foods to avoid, or if you want to stay super hydrated, or I don't know, kind of anything like that, or stretches, I don't know.
Yeah, so I would avoid recommending food and hydration because some clinics are really particular about that, right? Some clinics will be like, no, you cannot drink or eat before, right? Like 10 hours before the procedure, you're not allowed to. So I think the recommendation, I think doing some side stretches or some, I'm trying to think of a yoga pose that you could do in a clinic that wouldn't look totally weird. I can't think of anything. But some overhead stretches or side stretches or deep breathing to kind of slow your breath and also center yourself, I think are good physical things. I think if you're nursing, right, that you can, you'd want to make sure that you've pumped several days before the procedure, particularly if you're receiving general anesthesia, right? So if they're giving you medicine that helps you feel more relaxed and dulls some of that sharpness that you might feel during an abortion, you probably won't want to breastfeed for the next few days, given that medicine that they're putting into your body. And so we recommend that people who are breastfeeding pump and have that supply ready to go, so that, and it depends on the medicine in the clinic, right? And some people don't elect to get any medicine whatsoever, and that's fine too. But we recommend they've got that ready to go. What else? Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Okay. When it comes to taking a pill or having a chemical abortion instead, is any of the advice different, or is there anything specific to that you would recommend?
Again, it depends on whether they're doing it in a supportive clinic space or they're doing it at home, right? Because it's a much longer procedure, right? And procedure is almost not the right word for it. It just takes longer. And so again, making sure that if you're having, you're having a chemical abortion, right? You're taking a pill, then you've got several more days lined up than you would have for a physical extraction, right? And that you're able to take, at least 4 days off after you take the pill, at least.
Okay.
So you've got that, because it could take 2 to 3 days, right?
Yeah.
And that you've got, again, like you've got your laundry done, you've got your groceries, you've got plenty of crappy movies lined up. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just generally you'll want to have like a few days of bed rest. Obviously
That's
what you
right.
do at home depends on the person, but just don't
Yeah.
like be scheduling social outings and appointments and stuff.
Yeah, it's better to be at home for that sort of procedure. And I mean, again, we recommend that after you have an abortion in a clinic, right, that you also are probably going to want to just hang out at home.
Mm-hmm.
People can resume normal activity as soon as they feel comfortable, right? So going to the gym or having sex, if that's something that you want to do, right, you can do that right away.
Yeah, right away?
Yeah, if you wanted to, I think you should. I mean, I'd say exercise more than sex. But that might be putting my personal take onto things. I also have never heard somebody come out of a procedure and be like, yeah, let's
So
do this
horny right
again.
now.
Oh my God. Right? Most people are like, yeah, I just need to go home
Yeah.
and do nothing.
Okay. Okay. I'm trying to think of anything I haven't asked about, but I think we've covered a lot. Is there anything that I didn't kind of get to that you would want women to know who are about to have an abortion?
That there are just people out there that are willing to be a good supportive resource and to be careful about where you look for that information. That feels so terrible to say, right? Like
But
that's the reality, right? And to know that they're making the best choice for themselves. Yeah, I think that's it. Know that there are resources out there like the zine. If you don't have somebody to talk to, it's a really good place to start, right? That there are a lot of different books that will talk people through it. And there's like a bunch of different, if you go to the website section and the zine, like that's a good place for you to kind of look at in terms of resources that you could potentially put in your article, right?
Okay, great. Yeah, I would definitely like to point one into some sites and stuff and organizations.
Yeah, because then those are safe organizations that people can go to to get support and resources. So
Okay, great.
yeah, I think that's it.
Okay, thank you so much. This has been really helpful.
You're welcome. And if there's anything else I can do to help you, please let me know.
Let's see. Well, okay, so I am looking to talk to an OBGYN who performs abortions as well. And I've sent an email to Planned Parenthood. I haven't heard anything back yet.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is really surprising, but like the 3 institutions that I reached out to that often are very responsive and super helpful in providing me whoever I want to talk to, any kind of expert, all very quickly declined to hook me up with someone to talk to. I don't know, it's just surprising and weird, and I was very, the only other time that's happened is when I was talking about like medical marijuana, so I'm like, is this really still a taboo thing?
So it's still a taboo thing.
Crazy.
And a lot of providers, I would actually be very surprised if you can find somebody that wants to talk about that. Maybe go the midwife route, and I know midwives can't provide abortion, technically, but maybe I would look into midwives that are kind of radical and see if they have recommendations.
I would love to do that, and I may, but my editor also just wants me to talk to an OBGYN. So.
Yeah, I think you're going to be hard-pressed to find an OBGYN. They don't like to talk. They definitely don't like to give their names. Several OBGYNs have been killed in this country for performing abortions. So, like, if they don't want to put themselves out there, right? Yeah. And I think that's probably why a lot of institutions that provide abortions in New York City don't like to talk about it. Mm-hmm. And that's a matter of safety and being able to continue to provide those procedures. So, yeah, I think you'll have a hard time finding somebody that wants to talk to you in terms of an OBGYN.
Yeah. I was just so shocked and like sad, I guess.
Yeah, it's upsetting, but it's also like it's protective, right? They're
Yeah,
scared
I mean,
about
I
the
get it.
institution and scared about the provider.
Okay.
So, but yeah, maybe I mean, yeah, and midlife might be the best way to go. But I don't think you'll find an. I think I'll be surprised if you find an OBGYN. So,
Okay. All right.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for your help.
you're welcome. Good
Really
luck with your
appreciate it.
article.
Thank you.
Of course,
Do you
and we'd
mind
love
if
to.
I email with any kind of follow-ups or anything like that?
Oh, please do, and we'd love to see a copy of it so that we can keep
Oh,
it in our
absolutely.
archives. Cool.
Great.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Carolyn.
Yeah. Thank you for your time. Have a good
Of
one.
course. Of course. You too. Take care. Bye.
Bye.